WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I've worn my maybe little throwback for my Rofo shirt today. There's a little Houston Oiler blue in here, which maybe is a little nod to my dear friend John McClain, who has been putting up with me at the Houston Chronicle for most of his somewhat 40 years, back to the days of my Houston Oilers, Houston Oilers. And here come the Houston Texans this week, and John McClain is still doing it as well as ever, covering the National Football League down at Houston. And Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson. John, Lamar was not alive when the Ravens franchise began, so that starts to date you and me now, doesn't it?
Well, Watson's 23. Would he have been alive?
Well, let me know what? I'm going to look up when he was born in the timeline of Ray Lewis and see what year in 1996 he was born, and I'll tell you. He was born 95. So, yeah, Deshaun Watson was born September of 95. So he is about 9 weeks older than the Ravens franchise because, of course, they moved in the middle of the season, sort of, kind of. So
I tell you what, Nestor, I was asked this on one of my shows here this week about being excited about this game, and I thought about it. Gave a lot of thought to it because I've seen a lot of regular season games, and I am more excited about this game than any game the Texans have played in their regular season, including their victory this year in Arrowhead over Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. And it goes back to the days of the Oilers when they used to play the Steelers, their big rival in the AFC Central. And the Oilers used to beat them regularly in regular season, but they couldn't beat them in the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row. But I always got pumped about that game, the buzz it created around the city. And it's the same feeling here because of this game for two reasons. Ravens have won 5 in a row. Texans have won 2 in a row, 4 of 5. Watson has been playing great. Jackson's been playing great. We're looking at two quarterbacks, not revolutionizing the game, but playing a style that seems to be more and more teams are going to it every season. It's going to be, and I wrote this week about how Romeo Crennel's staying up late trying to figure out a way to stop their running game, and especially Jackson. And I'm writing today for tomorrow about Wink Martindale. He's not getting a lot of sleep either because of Watson and all the weapons the Texans have on their offense, not just at wide receiver, but at running back and tight end, which they haven't had recently. So I'm excited about it. I know it's going to be cold, good football weather. I love coming to Baltimore, love M.T. Bank Stadium, and I can't wait.
I wish we played every year, right? If we can annex this thing together, you and I could get together. But, I do want to paint this as an old school thing. I mean, you have covered the game so long, going back to even the Colts being here, and where the Ravens are, it feels like 3.0, right? There was the Billick Super Bowl year, then there was everything Flacco and Harbaugh and Ray Rice and, that era, and now there's this all new thing. And John, this time last year, I don't know, maybe you and I did a little radio in November of last year, because you do come on 3 or 4 times a year whenever I chase you down to talk about the Astros and whatnot. And I'll get to them cheating in a minute, but one thing at a time, because we have their guys too. But, through all of this next reboot, this time last year, John Harbaugh was going to get fired, right? This time last year, Joe Flacco was getting thrown out, and they didn't have an answer or wherever. Now, this kid's 13-3. He's got Sam Farmer flying in and Dan Pompei flying in, national writers flying in. I'm talking to guys from the Wall Street Journal this week. From afar, right? I mean, I walked into the locker room on Wednesday, John, and Domata Pekka's in there. You know what I mean? Like, he's now signed up here 11 weeks in. They dealt for Marcus Peters 4 weeks ago, and all he's done had 2 pick sixes. They filled in Josh Bynes and L.J. Ford back in week 3, week 4. They brought him in on Tuesday, put him into the game plan on Wednesday, and played him on Sunday. It's incredible how they maneuver as a franchise, and a guy like you that's covered this league through Bud Adams when you didn't have a team down there, and then getting the team back and the Super Bowl and all that the Texans have been through over the last 15 years, there's something about stability here that you look up and say, oh, the Ravens are 7-2. That doesn't shock me. How they're doing it is irrelevant. It's about ownership, leadership, coaching, scouting, continuity, all of that. Because the Ravens are really, really good at this. And I know you follow this from 50,000 feet. You see how good they are from the outside.
One of the things that's impressive about the Ravens, and I was thinking about this last week, when I was thinking about this game during the Texans bye week is what Harbaugh's done there with Jackson, going from Flacco to Jackson, reminds me of what Don Shula did in Miami. It's what great coaches do. Shula won a Super Bowl with a running game and with Brian Greasy throwing about 9 passes a game. And he went to the Super Bowl and changed his entire offense when he started Dan Marino in 1983, and Marino had the greatest passing season in history in 1984, and he went to the Super Bowl, and Shula totally changed his style of offense to fit the strength of the team, which was the quarterback, and that's what Harbaugh's done. Greg Roman, who coached here for 4 years under Dom Capers, Greg has done a tremendous job. Vic Fangio was a defensive coordinator here when Greg was here. Vic parlayed great defense in Chicago to a head coaching job with the Broncos, and I'm pretty sure that Greg is going to get more interviews, and he may finally get that first head coaching job. And it's the stability that they have going up to the ownership. And then, like, Eric Costa could have left numerous times to be a general manager with other teams, but he liked it there. He knew eventually Ozzie Newsome was going to step aside and he would take his place. And that's what you want. When you have change at the top, you hope that change comes from within, and you don't change something that's not broken. And it is amazing how many people are talking about Harbaugh being fired a year ago. Then they put Lamar Jackson in, and the rest is history.
Well, in the case of Lamar, you went through this in your head watching Deshaun Watson run into linebackers 2 or 3 years ago and saw, the dark side of a practice field that gets him, right? And then you also, you're familiar with Michael Vick. You're familiar with RG3. We're familiar with RG3. I had Dave Sheinin on this week. He was writing books about RG3 at about this point into his career. I don't know where this goes with Lamar, but there's no sage old guy like you that I've talked to this week that hasn't said, quarterbacks that run, this isn't a long-term plan. This isn't a 10-year plan because quarterbacks that run get hurt. I've heard a lot of that this week, not to sort of throw a wet blanket on everything that Lamar is and where he is at this point in his career and that he's improved everywhere because he has, but there still is that, don't go punching cards when you have a quarterback that's going to get hit 15, 20 times every week, or at least take chances to get hit 15 or 20 times every week.
Tell it to Steve Young. Steve Young ran right up until he won a Super Bowl, and then he retired because of concussions. Randall Cunningham was a great runner right up until the end of his career. RG3 had one of the best rookie years in history, was NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year over Andrew Luck, and then, boom, one bad hit, blew out 2 ligaments. And I watched Robert because I went to Baylor. And of course, he won the Heisman Trophy. He's one of my all-time favorite players, and I know him fairly well. And I thought when he used to play at Baylor and he ran like that, Baylor fans worried about it all the time. And the key is to be a smart runner, to know when to go down. You might have to leave some yards on the field. Don't try to hit the big play every time. At this point, Jackson's 22. He's young. He's elusive. That's the thing about defenses. They know how to stop it. They need to play discipline. They can't over-pursue, but it's like he's got grease on his jersey. They can't get him down. That's the whole key. You know what to do, but knowing and doing are 2 different things, and he's so elusive and he's so slick. And Watson's that way. Watson's a better passer than Jackson. Jackson's a better runner. But Jackson's a good passer and Watson's a good runner. And that's one reason these 2, barring injury, Watson's already blown out an ACL, but that was just in practice, not doing anything but pitching the ball, which tells you it can happen anywhere. But the way they've adjusted the offense, and I was amazed. I wrote a column this week, Nestor. I said, okay, you're playing the Ravens, and would you take this? You control the ball for more than 36 minutes. You limit their running game to double yards except for 1 carry in the 3rd quarter, and you still limit them to 68 yards under their season average. Would you take that?
You would.
And everybody's like, oh, yeah, we take it. And I said, well, that was the Bengals, and they got beat 49-13 without scoring a point in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, I have the lies and the damn lies and the statistics here, and this one's a doozy, right? Time of possession, all the basic things you would say, but pick sixes on the defense have been something that's come along. The defense was much more complimentary last year when it looked like, I said it looked like a magnetic game, John. It looked like they were playing bumper cars last year. The sophistication of what Greg Roman's been able to do, the multiple ways they do it with the tight ends and Pat Ricard and wide receivers that, quite frankly, would prefer to block than catch. Willie Snead wants to crack down on you and catch 2 or 3 balls a week. There's nobody stingy about all of this, but how the whole organization has bought into this. Marshall Yonda was at his locker talking about it this week. That's not an easy thing to do. And, John, I've been on the radio 29 years. I know you find that hard to believe at this point. I have never compared anyone to Michael Jordan before Monday. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of conversation we're having around here. Do you need to take my temperature, or is this normal?
I think as quarterback, you're comparing Jackson to Jordan because of great running. You want it to be because he's making great passing plays like Watson getting kicked in the eye, having to reach up, pull his face mask where he could see and seeing if his eye was still there and still throwing a touchdown pass. And I don't think Watson will ever have a play more impressive because the fact his eye was swollen immediately. And Jackson, the spins, the runs, the moves is just amazing watching him. He's such an incredible athlete. He could play almost any position other than the lines, and he would be great at it. And I think it's so much fun to watch. The one thing the Texans do best, they've been great against the run. They have not given up a 100-yard runner in 2 years. They have not given up. They're giving up 84 a game. They're third in the league. The last team to get 100 against them was Jacksonville in the second game when their rookie quarterback Gardner Minshew ran for 56 yards, most on the last series. And then in the second half of the opener at New Orleans, that was the most yards they've given up. So their run defense has been great, but they have not played against somebody like Jackson. The most mobile, and I wrote about this, the most mobile quarterback they've played has been Gardner Minshew. They did a great job against him in London, but he couldn't carry Jackson's jock when it comes to running. And so I'm really eager to see what kind of plan Romeo Crennel comes up with. And Wink Martindale, he's trying to come up with a plan for Deshaun Watson, and that's just another thing that makes this game so fascinating.
Here's John McClain. He's been my friend for a number of years. You can follow him at McClain_on_NFL. Doing it from Nashville down to Houston in his hometown and the Houston Chronicle. Although your hometown's Waco, though, right? I want to get that right.
That's where I grew up, and I moved to Houston in 1976 to cover hockey.
To cover hockey, the Arrows?
The Arrows with Gordie Howe and his sons, and learning hockey from Gordie Howe be like learning the Bible from Jesus.
I did not know this about you. We're already 2-3 beers into this relationship, McClain. I can't believe I didn't know that. So, every time I have you on, I learn something. So teach me about Deshaun Watson and the courage to draft him and bring him in and fill in the blanks. And also, no Watt, no Clowney. I mean, these are the first things that come up in Baltimore to say, where's Watt, where's Clowney? Oh, they're not on the field. Well, how can the Texans be this tough?
They play great. Well, no, they haven't played. They play great run defense. Their pass defense, they've been just banged up in the secondary big time. How they've been able to go 3-1 over the last 4 games with the guys they had in the secondary is amazing to me. They should have 2 of them back, a safety to Sean Gibson and rookie corner Lonnie Johnson Jr., who's pretty good. I don't think Bradley Roby will be back. He's been out with a hamstring injury, but they'll still be better off. Gary Conley, who came from Oakland in the trade for the 3rd-round pick they got from Seattle for Clowney, he's made one big play on the opponent's last series of the last 2 games against Oakland and Jacksonville that played a big-time role in helping them win those games. So as far as Watson, let's see, his offensive line they want to play has been intact. This will be the 4th game it's been together. They're 3-0 with the 5 starters that they want to play. Even with backups, he's only been sacked 7 times in the last 5 games. And a lot of that has to be his elusiveness, just like Lamar Jackson's elusive. And Watson doesn't look to run. He looks to pass, but if he has to run, he can. He's got a lot of receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller's coming back. Kenny Stills, who came with Laramie Tunsil from Miami, has been terrific down the field. And they have a tight end, Darren Spells, who was cut by Cleveland. And Darren's 34, and he has 6 touchdown catches, which is tied for the most for tight ends in the NFL. So, and the running back they got from Cleveland, Duke Johnson, is averaging 10.4 yards a catch, his career high. And then Carlos Hyde, how in the world, where he came from? He's on a pace. They traded a lineman who wasn't going to make the team to Kansas City for Carlos Hyde at the end of the off season because the Chiefs were going to cut Hyde. Hyde comes in here and he's on a pace for 1,300 yards, which would just shatter his career high of 900s 2 years in a row in San Francisco. So the running game has been good. They're 5th in the league in rushing, and Duke Johnson is a terrific threat out of the backfield. And both these teams, we're talking about the defenses. Baltimore's got a really good defense that has 5 touchdowns. The Texans don't score on defense. They don't take it away much. They do bend but don't break. And I would imagine that the Texans will do a good job against Ingram and Edwards. And as against Jackson, I don't know. They'll have a plan, but I don't know if they can bring him down. And it'll help them get Gibson back because he's good against tight ends. And I'm assuming he'll cover Andrews. But with all those 3 tight end formations, I don't have a clue who's going to cover the other 2.
Well, I like coming down to Houston and eating the food, doing the barbecue. I love the whole presentation of football. We don't get together with you guys often enough, so I do want to expand on Deshaun Watson. I mean, I know you to be this good citizen and this person that wanted to get football back and wanted to get a Super Bowl to Houston not once but twice. And to see what J.J. Watt has represented and done there, and everyone that I've talked to in Houston this week talks about what a good person Deshaun Watson is. Man, I remember Warwick Dunn coming around to me 15, 20 years ago talking about donating to houses and homes and kids and Habitat for Humanity. And I remember Paul Tagliabue's wife sitting in on my show 20 years ago at some Super Bowl back in the 90s or whatever. I've done a little research on this, and I know you've been up on all of Deshaun Watson and his whole story. The link to Warwick Dunn and what he's done to give back and what he and Watt, and I guess what Mr. McNair really wanted the franchise to sort of represent in the community. When I think of these guys, there have been some really good people involved with the Texans organization.
One of the things Bob McNair, when he was alive, he would not let them bring in bad guys. He said bad guys with baggage, with a history of baggage, they'll be the first to point fingers and become cancers in the locker room when things don't go well. He would let them break, people acted like he wanted choir boys. He didn't. He'd had guys that had been busted for marijuana, guys that had been tasered by police, and he especially didn't want anybody to hit a woman. And so they try to bring in good character. And so, and Watson, they all knew that. Rick Smith, former general manager, swapped first-round picks with Cleveland and then gave up his one the next year. So, in essence, gave up 1 first-round pick to get Watson, and nobody here complains about it. Once you trade up, you get that quarterback, just like the Ravens traded back into the first round to get Jackson. Once you do that and the player is good and you don't have to worry about that position, you don't care what you gave up. Fans and media don't care because there's so many teams that are struggling at quarterback still. It makes you think, get out on your knees to think you finally got a franchise quarterback, and that's what Watson's been. He's very tough. Last year he played with a collapsed lung and a broken rib and only missed 1 play, and that wasn't because of an injury. And everybody likes him. He's fun to interview. When I see Lamar Jackson, he and Watson remind me of each other. Polite, brought up very well, very respectful of others, and that's one reason people pull so hard for them as opposed to a quarterback like Baker Mayfield who's easy to dislike.
Well, all of these issues around quarterbacks, and you and I spend 6 months every year, going through this January, February, March, April, who we taking, who's going where. 11 teams passed on Deshaun Watson, and it was very clear how advanced he was. And we all saw him play at Clemson. And Lamar Jackson with a Heisman Trophy, that everybody, literally every team in the league, passed on him. I know they feed off of this and whatnot, but how many hits and misses there are, and you brought up Baker Mayfield and where coaching is involved and systems are involved, and how teams missed on Pat Mahomes, right? And Andy Reid said, I'll take that guy. It really is amazing how many, no offense to Ryan Leaf, who we have on the show, and he would probably agree, how many of those kind of guys there are that a year later, where's Josh Rosen? Where's Baker? Where are all these guys? And it wasn't just about Lamar. It's what you do around Lamar, the coaches you put around Lamar, as much as just that player, right? Deshaun Watson could have been a failure somewhere else in the wrong place, right?
It's a great point because Chicago Tribune did a really in-depth story this week about why they drafted Trubisky over Mahomes and Watson, and they could add Jackson. And they've determined that John Fox did not want that he didn't want Trubisky. He wanted Watson, and of course they took him. And now it haunts them. They're reminded about it constantly. Now they won Sunday. Trubisky threw 3 touchdown passes, but he didn't have a great game, and that's going to haunt them forever. And then at some point, they hope that, and maybe it's the coaching. Maybe it's not Trubisky. Maybe it's the coaching. They went 12-4 last year, made the playoffs. This year they've been awful for a number of reasons. But I feel bad for Trubisky. He hasn't done anything to have to put up with that misery. It's just the nature of the game. And he has to hear it every day of the year. The Bears passed up Mahomes and Watson for you. But who's to say if one of these other quarterbacks had not been with them, they wouldn't have struggled? Or what if Trubisky came to Harbaugh and he and Greg Roman tailored their offense to fit his skill set? But so often players are done an injustice by the teams they have to go to because of the lack of continuity with the system. Like Marcus Mariota. He had 5 play callers, 5 different systems with different terminology, and 4 different offensive coordinators in his 5th year, as opposed to someone who's had the same coach and the same system. And it's almost not fair, but that's what happens when you're with a bad team.
John McClain, he knows about bad teams and good teams. He's bringing a good team up here. He is with the Houston Chronicle. You can follow him, McClain _on_NFL. He will be bringing up the Texans. All right, so let's get off football for a minute. Anybody that knows about you and knows about me and knows about us, not just my wife's illness and our nachos together and doing stuff. You love the Houston Astros. We've talked a lot about Astro Ball. We talked a lot about Mike Elias. We've talked a lot about Sig Mejdal. I am trying to piece together what the parade in D.C. means for my community. It certainly has brought a death to my hometown 15 years later that the Nationals exist and they're good, and our place is still run, like an ATM for the Angelos family. Meanwhile, the Astros apparently did everything right. They won. Now this scandal breaks. Had I had you on the show Monday when I called you, there would have been no scandal. I know we're in the early stages of this. You have been very, very engrossed in Bill Belichick's spy gates and deflate gates and writing about it and talking to people about it. This is a baseball scandal, and in the early stages of this, doesn't look good right now, does it?
The Astros are already being investigated because of Brandon Taubman, their assistant GM, who lashed out at some women after a playoff victory, and he got fired. And the way their initial reaction, they put out a release that attacked Sports Illustrated, and the woman that wrote it, then they had to personally apologize. It's like PR 101. They don't know what it is. And
during the World Series, no less, right? Like when it should be, when they should be celebrating, literally.
And then they run off Reed Ryan, who was running the administrative side of their organization, Nolan Ryan's son. And Reed did a tremendous job with the Astros, popular with everybody in the media, fans, players, everybody in the organization. But Jim Crane moved him out and brought in his son, Jared, to take his place, even though he'd never been in the organization. So he's going to constantly be compared to Reed Ryan. And Nolan announced that since Reed's gone, his contract's up 4 months, and he's not coming back either. And so that has created controversy here. Now, the story in The Athletic yesterday, quoting anonymous sources, that's one thing. They've had anonymous source stories about their cheating before, but when their former pitcher, Mike Fiers, went on the record and told exactly what they were doing, and I was asked on my show this morning, does this taint the World Series for me? And I say no. I said, I'm sure they were cheating. There's been too many people accusing them of it. And now you have a former player, and I can't wait till Mike Fiers comes to Minute Maid Park and pitches next year, detailing exactly what happened. And what's funny, Nestor, is they were better on the road than they were at home, and obviously they weren't doing a good job of cheating in this World Series because they lost every home game to the Nationals. By the way, my wife's got to be the only person in the country that has a season ticket package to the Nationals and the Astros, so she couldn't go wrong. And so I don't doubt that they're cheating. I think baseball is going to, Rob Manfred will fine them, I'm sure, a lot of money. I think it'll be seven figures, and I also believe that they'll take away like number one pick, maybe more, because they said when they got the Red Sox last year, if this happens again, we're going to start taking away draft choices. And even though they're not as valuable as they are in the NFL, the Astros have done great with their draft picks, so that's something. Money's nothing to a multi-billionaire, but when you start taking away valuable draft choices, that is.
Well, and I guess just the baseball, the scandal part of it for Houston is, and maybe this speaks to the New England Patriots. And I've always thought that the Ravens and the Colts were conspiring with Pagano and various factions here on Deflategate for sure. That when you're cheating, the people that you're cheating with, when they go play for the Royals or they go play for the Cubs, and they're pissed off at you and they know the system. Whatever Belichick's been doing to cheat the last 20 years, the most amazing part is that no one's ever gone on the record to say, I was in there and let me tell you how they broke the rules.
Maybe they signed confidentiality agreements. And, of course, I'm kidding. That would be against the rules. But I'll tell you this. What the Astros have done is doing it in real time. It's one thing to steal signs, to do a great job. That's as old as baseball is. But using a camera, position with a camera in center field, and then signaling another camera is so sophisticated, but then they banged on a trash can to let the hitter know that if it was a breaking ball or a fastball. I think if they banged on the trash can as breaking ball, and so you'd think they'd all be hitting the ball like crazy, but knowing what's coming and hitting it are two different things. But it is dominating the news.
Well, that means every player on the team knew about it. Camera memory. I mean, this is where the Shoeless Joe thing and the Pete Rose thing and the cheating thing and the getting even, right? The unwritten rule is, Fiers, next time you come to the plate, we're gonna brush you back with a 102-mile-an-hour heater at your chin. That's been the rockhead mentality, meathead mentality of baseball forever. I don't expect that to change, but I know one of the big problems in the NFL was that Goodell didn't want to bring down Tom Brady and bring down the game and bring down the team because nothing good comes from that, right? So nothing good comes from hanging the Astros if you're Rob Manfred on the holistic side of baseball, other than everybody else is probably pretty pissed about this, right?
Why is it that losing teams never get accused of cheating? Isn't that funny? Never happens to losers, only winners. And if they take away a draft choice, just one number one pick, they can survive that. The money's no big deal, but I don't know, whatever other penalties they would do would be unprecedented, and I don't expect them to, because I think that story said something like there's 7 other teams doing this, and that's just the ones you know. I would think with technology the way it is today, that a lot of teams are trying to figure out how they can use the technology to help them win, whether it breaks the rules or not.
Well, I remember in our own stadium, we had our videographer when Billick was the coach who always, you don't show replays that might help the other team. You show replays that might help your team. This is before red flag challenges became something they manage out of New York. I mean, I guess there's a home field advantage, and then there's cheating. And, somewhere in the middle is what we're arguing. John, I love you, appreciate you. We'll see you in Baltimore. You'll never eat a tourist crab cake in my town, pal.
I can't wait to get there, Nestor. Thank you very much, as always.
John McClain, the Houston Chronicle. We could go all day. He is McClain _on_ NFL. He is out on Twitter. He has covered the National Football League for 40 years, going back to my Houston Allers and being very kind to me back when I was a Cub reporter. And John Stedman set us up on a blind phone call because McClain knew everything about the Oilers. And all I ever wanted to do was know anything about the Oilers. So wearing my Rofo Oiler blue shirt today and my Pizza John's hat as a special nod to Earl Campbell and Dennis Colazzos. Matt Skura joined us out at Jennings Cafe on Tuesday night. We had a great time. It's all up in the bio, Toyota.com audio vault. You'll hear that. Luke is in Owings Mills. I'm doing Baltimore Positive through Vignaraja. Joining us on Thursday talking about running for mayor of Baltimore. And Police Commissioner Harrison joining us in a couple of weeks as well. I got some travel coming up. We're in L.A. next week. Lots of stuff going on around here. Josh Bynes on Monday night at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen as well. I'm going to present him with the copy of Purple Rain 2 he never got back in 2014. I don't know how that happened. But I told him in the locker room Wednesday, I'm going to make it right on Monday. Come on out to Adams Jeep in Aberdeen. Support us. We'll see you there on Monday around 7:30 with Josh Bynes. Texans, Ravens. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.